Hey there, viewers. Today we're going to talk about one of many train wrecks behind the new Snow White movie. No, not that train wreck. I don't have enough time or PhDs in the world to unpack that shit show. No, what we're going to talk about today is the whole Peter Dinklage debacle. I know he's looked at as basically the god emperor of little people, but he's the finger that basically pushed over the dominoes that led to this abomination. It's like one terrible Rube Goldberg machine. I like Dinklage in his movies. Obviously, he's a talented actor and good for him for getting big roles despite his size and not because of it. You know what? He could probably even beat Eric Cartman in a fight, too. The issue I have is when he made this comment.
Take a step back and look at what you're doing there. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that fucking backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the fuck are you doing, man?
Backward story? I also remember learning in history class that little people were made to go into mines like canaries and search for gemstones. It says right here in my textbook.
It doesn't say that anywhere.
Oh wait, it doesn't. From what I can discern, there is records of little people throughout history being dressed up and made to dance as entertainment. They'd be included in carnival sideshows, freak shows if you're nasty. As terrible as that was, do any of these dwarves look like they're put in cages and dressed up to dance for rich people? No, of course not. I know Dopey is, well, dopey, but he's not a commentary on anything in particular. He's just meant to be a silly character people can latch onto. Is it because the dwarves are dirty and uncivilized in some ways? Is that the connection to the old sideshow attraction that some have expressed? Is it because they're depicted as comic relief? Is it because they don't know how to act around women?
It's a girl. She's mighty pretty.
All of this sounds more like their typical male bachelors the more I say things out loud. Tell me all of those things I described doesn't sound more like your 20-something burnout cousin than a little person. Was Dinklage thinking that mining for gems was Disney somehow saying little people are greedy? Well, that doesn't make any sense either. That's not a stereotype I've ever heard of. Seriously, I don't understand what's harmful about their depiction. Maybe I'm out of line and someone in the comments will be sure to berate me about something. You know, he already got a lot of backlash from many people already, but there are lots of actors that happen to be little people that are the most affected. These are probably the most famous dwarf characters in the world, even above the Tolkien dwarves most likely. These poor actors have a hard time already getting roles, and to lose the biggest ones because some guy says ignorant offhand comments that aren't even true has to be extremely frustrating. Dinklage's time as Tyrion Lannister was that extra push to superstardom he needed. He's effectively the only little person who gets consistent work, and productions will go out of their way to give him roles that weren't made for little people. Other little people don't have this luxury at all. I'm not surprised a lot of them were vocal about losing acting opportunities because yet another celebrity wanted to run their mouth and thinks they're smarter than they really are. But it's time for me to sit you all down and give you guys a history, or more accurately, a fictional history lesson. Peter will probably never see this or learn from it, so you can go play by yourself in the corner. Go on. It's okay, little buddy. Oh shit, I shouldn't have said little buddy. To start off, have you ever wondered why they all work in mines specifically and are all dwarves? Well, I kind of just answered it in the question itself. There is a clear distinction between a human living with medical dwarfism, the term has essentially been dropped for the preferred nomenclature of little person, and the fantasy race known as dwarves. If we take little people in the real world, for example, it's considered a medical abnormality for someone to be born this way.
Sir, will you please stop staring at me?
Where's the rest of you?
2 average-sized people can have a child with this condition, and while the chances of 2 little parents having a child with this condition is higher than the average-height couple, the little parents can also have an average-height child. Peter Dinklage himself has quote-unquote normal-sized children. What does this matter? Well, in fantasy, 2 people of the dwarven race will always produce another dwarf, and I don't mean races and skin tones, I mean more literally like elves, hobbits, Gungans, Gorons, and whatever Honey Boo Boo's mom is. The lineage of modern fantasy dwarves can be traced back to Tolkien's Middle-earth with Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Within Tolkien's lore, there were 7 created by the Valar Aule so he could pass on his teachings and were effectively his children. They were created completely separately from humans and as such are not simply little people. When Sauron had the rings made, 7 were given to the Dwarf Lords. There's that number 7 again. I wonder if there's a connection here. In canon, the dwarven communities revolve around collecting gems, gold, and treasure in mines.
Built deep within the mountain itself, the beauty of this fortress city was legend. Its wealth lay in the earth, in precious gems hewn from rock, and in great seams of gold, running like rivers through stone. The skill of the dwarves was unequaled, fashioning objects of great beauty out of diamond, emerald, ruby, and sapphire.
As you've been seeing on screen as well, they are depicted as bearded and having large noses, just like the ones in Snow White. These are much more than mere coincidences. If you thought I've been implying this whole time that Snow White was inspired by Tolkien's work, that actually isn't possible. The original Snow White animation was released in 1937 and would have presumably taken at least a year, likely several, to make. The Hobbit was published in 1937 as well. It's doubtful that in the 1930s, a British professor and an American children's animation company would develop similar characters and pass notes between each other, so what else could it be? Well, The Hobbit actually had 13 dwarves. The 7 dwarf lords and original 7 dwarves were added later in his lore, so were they inspired by Snow White? Was the inspiration the other way around? As a lot of you know, Snow White is actually just a sanitized version of an old German fairy tale. The fairy tale, like so many others, were collected and published by the Brothers Grimm. So that's mystery solved, right? Snow White was inspired by Snow White. We've proven nothing. Well, thanks for watching. Okay, that's not where this ends. I'm positive Tolkien had to have known about the original Snow White fairy tale. 3, 7, and 9 are kind of considered magical numbers, so it's likely a coincidence, but he had a sense of humor and likely did it as a tongue-in-cheek reference. But did you know that one of his biggest inspirations was Germanic folklore and Norse mythology? Elves, trolls, wargs, and yes, even dwarves that we see as common fantasy tropes all have origins here. Snow White does not have these other races, and Gandalf himself was based on Odin. In the Silmarillion, the characters known as the Valar are based off of angels or the Norse pantheon of gods known as the Aesir, or some combination of the two. The One Ring and the broken sword in Arsenal also have connections to Norse stories as well. Look at these dwarf names in Norse mythology. Some of these names are so close to Tolkien dwarf names and others are basically the same. Now, the original 7 dwarfs from Snow White weren't named until Disney's version, but look at these Norse names again under what the names mean. All wise and very wise. The disappearing, shy, glow, gleam, and shine, or the good-natured, silly person and blockhead, stubborn and defiant, and multiple that reference sleep or laziness. Crazy that we have multiple name meanings that could plausibly link back to the 7 dwarves. Now, the only one that I couldn't find a clear analog for is Sneezy, but it's possible that a puff of wind, snorter, or even roaring and yeller could work. Listen to this guy sneeze. So we seem to have found our origin point for all the dwarves in general. It's almost obvious if you look at the modern version of the mythology, I mean, kind of, in Thor from Marvel Comics. The dwarves here are also miners and blacksmiths, just like these other depictions.
You were supposed to protect us.
Wait a minute.
Asgard was supposed to protect us.
Damn it, Dinklage! You just had to take the same backwards-ass role you were criticizing. Do you wonder if that's why he's like 10 feet tall in the movie? Was it part of the clause of his contract or whatever? Is it literally just the height that makes it ass backwards? Guess when it benefits his bank account, it's alright, hey? You can have little people portray fantasy dwarves like in Snow White and the Huntsman and Mirror Mirror and not have a problem. The reason Dinklage had a problem was because he had no idea what he was talking about, and it led to a chain of events eventually resulting in box office poison. This all could have been avoided if anyone had the balls to say, "You're an idiot," instead of bowing down to someone not even involved in the movie in the first place. That's about all I have to say on the subject. If you liked what you saw, I would appreciate if you would like, comment, and subscribe, and if you feel like it, you can check out my Patreon for some exclusive perks. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to wake the windfish.
Don't